In the depths of space, where stars twinkle like distant memories, humanity faced its greatest test of compassion. The massive alien fleet appeared without warning, drifting helplessly through our solar system. Their engines were dead, life support systems failing, and hope dwindling with each passing moment. But they had somehow found us, Earth, the blue marble that would become their last chance at survival. I remember the day the news broke. I was working my usual shift at Mission Control when our long-range scanners picked up the signals. At first, we thought they were just space debris or random electromagnetic interference. But as the data streamed in, our screens lit up with images that would change human history forever. Hundreds of massive ships, each 1 kilometer long, floating powerless through the void. Their distress call was simple yet haunting, a repeating mathematical sequence that any spacefaring civilization would recognize as a cry for help. The message was clear: they were running out of time. Our scientists worked around the clock to decipher their more complex communications, while governments worldwide debated our response. Should we help these mysterious visitors? Could we trust them? What if this was some elaborate trap? But as we learned more about their situation, one thing became crystal clear. They weren't conquerors or invaders. They were refugees, survivors of a cosmic disaster that had forced them to flee their home system. Their antimatter drive cores had failed during the desperate escape, leaving them stranded in the cold embrace of space. Without help, the 15 million souls aboard those ships would perish. The decision to assist them wasn't unanimous, but it was swift. Humanity had its share of differences and conflicts, but we couldn't stand by and watch an entire civilization die when we had the power to help. Within days, the world's space agencies united in what would become the largest rescue operation in human history. We called it Operation Starbridge. Every space-capable nation contributed resources, from rockets and fuel to food and medical supplies. Private space companies retooled their entire production lines to build the specialized equipment we'd need. Engineers worked tirelessly to adapt our technology to interface with their alien systems. The scale of the challenge was unprecedented. We needed to reach ships scattered across millions of kilometers, stabilize their deteriorating systems, and somehow tow these massive vessels to safety, all with technology that was centuries behind theirs. But we had one advantage they didn't: our determination to succeed. I led one of the first rescue teams out to their nearest ship. As our shuttle approached the enormous vessel, its surface scared by whatever catastrophe had forced them to flee, I couldn't help but wonder about the faces we'd meet inside. Would they look anything like us? Would we be able to understand each other beyond basic mathematics and physics? The airlock cycled, and as we floated into their ship, we made first contact. The beings we met were nothing like what we'd imagined, yet in their eyes, yes, they had eyes, we saw something deeply familiar: hope. They had risked everything on the chance that they'd find someone, anyone, who would show them kindness in their darkest hour. What happened next would test the limits of human ingenuity, courage, and compassion. But as I float here now, watching Earth's combined fleet move into position around the first alien vessel, I know one thing for certain: this is just the beginning of our story, a story that proves that even among the stars, humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence, but our capacity for kindness. This is the story of how we reached out to catch a falling civilization, and in doing so, discovered something profound about ourselves. The first challenge was figuring out how to tow a ship that weighed more than a small moon. Our initial attempts were like trying to move a mountain with a piece of string, frustrating and nearly impossible. We lost 2 experimental towing cables before Chief Engineer Sarah Chen suggested a radical solution: using their own damaged antimatter drives as anchor points for our gravitational tethers. The alien engineers, we called them the Starborn, though that wasn't their real name, were initially skeptical. Through our rudimentary translation systems, they tried to explain why it wouldn't work. But desperation has a way of making the impossible seem worth trying. After 3 days of non-stop calculations and simulations, we convinced them to let us try. I'll never forget standing in that alien engine room, surrounded by technology we barely understood. The starborn engineer working with me had skin that shifted colors like an octopus, reflecting their emotions in waves of blue and green. They were nervous. We all were. If we made one mistake, the antimatter containment could fail, and that would be the end of everything within 1,000 kilometers. The operation had to be perfectly synchronized across all rescue ships. We had hundreds of vessels positioned around the alien fleet, each one ready to establish a gravitational link. The countdown echoed through every comm channel in a dozen languages. When we hit 0, the gravitational tethers activated simultaneously. For one heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, ever so slowly, the massive ships began to move. The cheer that went up in that alien engine room needed no translation. Hope has its own universal language. But our victory was short-lived. As we began the careful process of towing the fleet toward Earth's orbit, our sensors detected something troubling. The damage to their ships was worse than we'd initially thought. Microfractures were spreading through their hulls like spiderwebs, stressed by the gravitational forces of our rescue attempt. We had maybe 72 hours before the structural integrity of their vessels would be compromised. To make matters worse, our own ships were starting to show signs of strain. The power required to maintain the gravitational tethers was pushing our reactors to their limits. We needed a solution fast, but the only shipyard large enough to handle repairs of this scale was on the far side of Mars, and at our current speed, we'd never make it in time. That's when the Starborn shared something that changed everything. Through a series of complex holographic displays, they revealed why they had really chosen our solar system. They hadn't stumbled upon Earth by accident. They had been searching for something specific, something they believed was hidden in our asteroid belt. Their historical records spoke of an ancient outpost, built by their ancestors thousands of years ago. If it still existed, it might contain the technology we needed to save their fleet. But finding a single structure in the vastness of the asteroid belt would be like looking for a specific grain of sand on all Earth's beaches combined. As I watched the holographic star charts swirl around us, showing possible locations of this mysterious outpost, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the Starborn were keeping. Were they really telling us everything? And more importantly, what would we find if we actually located this ancient structure? Time was running out, and we had to make a decision. Continue our slow journey to Mars and risk losing the entire fleet, or divert course to search for a possibly mythical alien outpost that might not even exist anymore. Looking into the color-shifting face of my alien counterpart, I knew which choice we had to make. Sometimes the craziest plans are the only ones worth trying. The asteroid belt loomed before us like a cosmic minefield. Billions of rocks, ranging from the size of pebbles to small moons, created a deadly dance of orbiting debris. Our combined fleet, now moving as one massive formation, had to navigate this chaos while maintaining our fragile gravitational tethers. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and we'd lose everything. The Starborn's advanced sensors helped narrow down our search area, but we still had to check thousands of asteroids. Each hour that passed brought another report of hull breaches and failing systems from the refugee ships. I watched as families huddled together in emergency shelters, their color-changing skin now a uniform gray of exhaustion and fear. We'd come too far to fail them now. Then we got our first break. One of our mining survey ships detected an unusual radiation signature, something that definitely wasn't natural. As we approached the source, we found an asteroid nearly twice the size of Manhattan, spinning slowly in the void. But this was no ordinary space rock. Geometric patterns covered its surface, too regular to be anything but artificial. The discovery energized both human and alien crews, but our excitement quickly turned to frustration as we realized we couldn't find any way inside. The Starborn's ancient access codes were useless. Millennia of cosmic radiation had corrupted whatever systems might have recognized them. We had the equivalent of a key, but the lock had changed. That's when the youngest member of our engineering team made an observation that changed everything. The patterns on the asteroid's surface weren't just decorative. They were moving. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely moving. Like clockwork gears, but operating on a timescale of hours rather than seconds. We matched the asteroid's rotation and began documenting the pattern changes. The Starborn recognized elements of their ancient mathematics in the movements, but it was actually a human archaeologist who made the crucial connection. The patterns weren't just moving, they were counting. The entire asteroid was a giant combination lock, waiting for someone to solve its puzzle. With our rescue fleet's systems failing and time running out, we began the desperate race to crack the code. Human mathematicians worked alongside Starborn scholars, combining our different approaches to mathematics. The patterns seemed to be telling a story, one written in the language of geometry and motion. But what was the question we needed to answer? The breakthrough came at the worst possible moment. Just as we thought we'd identified the key sequence, alarms blared throughout the fleet. The gravitational tethers were failing. 3 of our largest ships had lost power completely, their crews evacuating to other vessels. The Starborn ships were beginning to drift apart, their hulls groaning under the increasing structural stress. We had minutes, not hours, to solve this puzzle. Our combined fleet was falling apart around us, and the only thing that could save us was locked inside this ancient outpost. Through the command center window, I could see the asteroid's patterns shifting faster now, as if sensing our desperation. The final sequence was ready. Our best guess at what the ancestors of the Starborn had left as their key, but entering it wrong could trigger who knows what kind of ancient defense systems. As I looked around at the faces of both humans and aliens, I saw the same mix of hope and fear that had brought us all together in this moment. With trembling hands, I began inputting the sequence. Behind us, another gravitational tether snapped with a force that shook our entire ship. The pattern on the asteroid's surface began to glow, responding to our input. Either we were about to save 15 million lives, or we were about to make a catastrophic mistake that would end this rescue mission in tragedy. The next few seconds would determine everything. The asteroid's surface erupted with light, revealing intricate patterns we hadn't seen before. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the alarms warning of our failing ships seemed to fade away. Then, with a deep resonance that vibrated through our bones, the ancient structure began to open. But what we found inside wasn't what anyone had expected. Instead of a technological paradise filled with advanced machinery, we discovered what appeared to be a graveyard of ships. Hundreds of vessels, all different designs, all clearly ancient, floated lifeless in the hollowed-out heart of the asteroid. The Starborn's skin shifted to deep purple, a color I'd never seen them display before. Through our translators came a single word: predecessors. As our emergency teams scrambled to explore the structure, we discovered these weren't just any ships. They were rescue vessels, each one apparently drawn here just like us, over thousands of years. The Starborn's ancestors hadn't built this place. They'd found it, just as we had. But why were all these ships abandoned? And more importantly, where were their crews? We had no time to ponder these questions. Another gravitational tether snapped, sending shockwaves through our fleet. The Starborn ships were now drifting dangerously close to each other. We needed solutions, not mysteries. Our scan teams pushed deeper into the structure, hoping to find anything we could use. That's when we found the central chamber. Suspended in its center was a crystalline structure that pulsed with its own inner light. The Starborn engineers reacted immediately, their skin flickering with rapid color changes. They recognized the technology, not from their own history, but from ancient legends. Stories about beings they called the architects, who had supposedly seeded the galaxy with outposts of unimaginable power, but activating unknown technology from an extinct civilization. The risk was enormous. Yet, as another hull breach alarm sounded through the fleet, we realized we were out of options. Either we took this chance, or we watched 15 million refugees die in the cold of space. The Starborn engineers worked frantically to interface with the crystal, while our teams tried to stabilize the failing ships. But something wasn't right. With each attempt to activate the ancient technology, the crystal's pulses grew stronger, and our instruments detected massive energy buildups throughout the asteroid. Then one of our science officers noticed something terrifying: the energy signature from the crystal. It matched exactly with readings from the disaster that had originally damaged the Starborn fleet. This wasn't a rescue station at all. It was a trap designed to lure in damaged ships with promises of salvation. Suddenly, the crystal flared blindingly bright. Emergency klaxons blared as energy levels spiked off our charts. We had seconds to make a decision. Try to shut it down and risk losing everything, or let the sequence complete and face whatever the architects had planned for ships that found their outpost. Through the chaos, I locked eyes with the starborn engineer beside me. Their skin had settled into a calm, deep blue. They reached out and placed their hand on the crystal's control surface. Before I could stop them, they began an override sequence, not trying to activate the technology, but attempting something far more dangerous. They were trying to merge their failing ship's antimatter drives with the crystal's power source. It was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. If it worked, we might be able to convert the trap into salvation. If it failed, we'd all be atoms scattered across the asteroid belt. The crystals pulsing synchronized with the dying heartbeat of the starborn ships. We were committed now, for better or worse, to whatever happened next. And as the chamber filled with blinding light, I realized we were about to find out just how far trust between two species could go. Sometimes, the only way to escape a trap is to spring it on your own terms. The crystal's energy merged with the antimatter drives in a spectacular display of light and power. For a terrifying moment, I thought we'd made a catastrophic mistake. The entire asteroid structure groaned and shuddered around us. But then something remarkable happened. The ancient technology began to adapt, responding to the starborn's desperate gambit. The trap, designed to destroy, was being transformed by the very thing it was meant to target. The antimatter drives weren't just powering the crystal, they were rewriting its fundamental purpose. Streams of energy, now a brilliant mix of blue and gold, shot out from the central chamber, enveloping every ship in our fleet. Damaged hulls began to repair themselves. Failing systems stabilized. The gravitational tethers we'd struggled so hard to maintain were replaced by something far more sophisticated, a field of energy that cradled our entire fleet like a protective bubble. We weren't just being saved, we were being reborn. As the transformation continued, ancient holographic displays sprang to life throughout the asteroid. They showed us the true story of this place. The architects hadn't built it as a trap. They'd created it as a test of cooperation, innovation, and trust between different species. All those empty ships we found, their crews hadn't perished. They'd failed the test, choosing to flee rather than work together when the crystal first activated. We had succeeded where others had failed, not because we were smarter or more advanced, but because humans and Starborn had chosen to trust each other despite every reason not to. The crystal wasn't just repairing our ships, it was upgrading them, integrating the best of both our technologies into something entirely new. But the biggest surprise came when we discovered what the architects had left for those who passed their test. Hidden deep within the asteroid's databanks were coordinates, hundreds of them, marking the locations of similar outposts throughout the galaxy. Each one contained different pieces of the architect's legacy, waiting for species who could prove themselves worthy of inheriting it. The Starborn finally had their chance at a new home, and humanity had just taken its first real step into the galactic community. As our newly transformed fleet prepared to leave the asteroid belt, I watched the colors ripple across my Starborn friend's skin. A mesmerizing pattern of gold and silver I'd never seen before. Joy, I realized. They were showing us joy. Yet even as we celebrated our survival, a final message from the architects appeared on our screens. The coordinates they'd left us came with a warning. We weren't the first to pass their test, and we wouldn't be the last. Somewhere out there, other species were finding their own outposts, gathering their own pieces of the architect's technology. Someday we would all meet. The question was, when that day came, would we remember the lesson we'd learned here? That our greatest strength lies not in the technology we wield, but in our ability to trust, to cooperate, to see beyond our differences. As our fleet turned toward Earth, carrying both human and Starborn crews, I looked at the ancient asteroid one last time. Its surface was shifting again, rearranging itself, preparing for the next visitors who might find themselves in need of rescue. But this time, it wasn't a trap. It was a gift. A reminder that in the vastness of space, the things that unite us are far stronger than those that divide us. The real adventure, we all realized, was just beginning. The return journey to Earth was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. Our transformed fleet moved with an elegance that made our earlier rescue attempts seem primitive by comparison. The architect's technology had not only saved us, but had given both our species a glimpse of what we could achieve together. The sight of 15 million starborn refugees seeing Earth for the first time is something I'll never forget. Their skin rippled with waves of iridescent colors as they pressed against viewport windows, taking in the blue marble that would become their temporary home. We had already begun constructing habitats in orbit that could accommodate their unique biological needs. The integration wasn't always smooth. There were cultural misunderstandings, communication challenges, and the occasional diplomatic incident. But whenever tensions rose, someone would inevitably bring up the story of the asteroid outpost, a reminder of what we could accomplish when we chose trust over fear. The Starborn shared their knowledge freely. Their advanced understanding of antimatter technology revolutionized our space travel capabilities, while our expertise in adapting to new environments helped them establish their first permanent settlement on Mars. Together, we began studying the coordinates left by the architects, preparing for future expeditions that would take both our species to the far corners of the galaxy. 1 year after the rescue, we held a ceremony at the newly established Unity Station in Earth orbit. Representatives from both species gathered to commemorate what we now called the Bridge event. The Starborn presented us with a gift, a crystal similar to the one we'd found in the asteroid, but smaller. They'd crafted it using their ancestral techniques combined with the architect's technology. When activated, it projected a real-time map of all known outposts, a constant reminder of the mysteries still waiting to be solved. During the ceremony, my Starborn friend, who I'd worked with in that ancient engine room, approached me. Their skin shifted through colors I'd learned to recognize as thoughtful contemplation. Through our now much improved translators, they shared something their people had discovered in their studies of the architect's data. The test hadn't just been about cooperation or trust. It had been about evolution, not of technology or biology, but of understanding. Each species that passed would add their own unique perspective to the network of outposts, creating a living library of different ways to view the universe. As I stand here now, watching human and starborn ships launch together from our joint spaceport, I think about the warning we received. Somewhere out there, other species are finding their own outposts, learning their own lessons. When we finally meet them, we'll bring not just the technology we've gained, but the wisdom we've earned. The architects left us more than coordinates and advanced technology. They left us a choice. Every species that finds an outpost faces the same decision: to treat others as threats or potential allies, to hoard knowledge or share it, to walk the path of isolation or cooperation. We made our choice in that asteroid, when a human rescue fleet refused to abandon a stranded alien civilization, and when a Starborn engineer trusted their people's fate to a desperate plan. That choice continues to shape our future as we reach for the stars together. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries aren't the ancient artifacts or advanced technologies. Sometimes, they're the simple realizations that change how we see ourselves and our place in the cosmos. In reaching out to help a dying civilization, we didn't just save the Starborn. We learned how to be better humans. And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift the architects left us all.